They told you to be humble, but they didn't tell you it's a cage, a weapon, one they use to keep you small and obedient. What if humility isn't a virtue, but a trap? The world doesn't reward the silent, but the ruthless. You've been taught to dim your light, to shrink yourself in the name of modesty. But behind that idea is control. Control by those who don't want you to rise. This video will break down the dark truth about humility, using insights from Machiavelli, Jung, and the brutal laws of real power. This journey teaches you why the humble are used, overlooked, and erased. How history's most powerful minds rejected humility and took what was theirs. And how to master the art of silent confidence without ever kneeling again. If you're tired of being invisible, this may be the moment you stop apologizing and start dominating. 1. Humility is a social weapon used to weaken the strong. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Machiavelli didn't whisper this. He declared it in defiance of a world built to suppress power under the illusion of goodness. Because here's the truth. Humility, in its weaponized form, is not a trait. It's a tactic, a mechanism to strip the lion of its fangs and replace them with a purr. It teaches you to lower your gaze while others climb over your back, to apologize for excellence, to shrink so the insecure can feel safe. Have you ever noticed who demands your humility? Who insists you stay grounded? It's rarely the wise, it's the weak. The ones threatened by your ascent, masked as mentors guiding your soul. But if your humility serves others more than it serves you, then it is not virtue, it is sabotage. And so you must ask, who benefits from my silence? Who stands taller when I stoop lower? These are not philosophical riddles. These are survival questions. Because in the arena of power, the humble don't win. They're stepped over, praised, and forgotten. Like a sharpened blade hidden in a velvet sheath, never used, never feared. Imagine a lion raised like a house cat, taught to purr instead of roar, fed daily, praised for its calm. Until one day, hunger gnaws deeper than fear, and instinct awakens. That lion remembers, and the world trembles. So what happens when you remember? When you stop apologizing for wanting more? When you no longer mistake meekness for morality? You were not born to bow. You were not created to dim so others can shine. There is a storm beneath your skin, and the world has taught you to keep it quiet. But storms do not apologize. They arrive, they break, they rebuild. Here's your truth. False humility is the poison that keeps kings from their throne. And the moment you see it for what it is, the game ends. The lion wakes, the mask falls, and the world meets the version of you it was never prepared for. Now ask yourself, who told you to stay small? 2. The world doesn't reward the modest, it devours them. The world is not a temple of virtue, it is a stage. And on that stage, silence is not noble, it's invisible. You were taught that modesty was admirable, that shrinking back was a sign of grace. But in the real world, no one crowns the quiet. They vanish, unthanked, unseen, erased by those who had the audacity to speak louder. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow, Carl Jung once wrote. And that light? It never shines on the modest, only on the bold. Visibility is power, not because the loud are always wise, but because they dare to be seen. The world moves for those who command attention, not those who wait for it. Think of the soldier who bled for the kingdom, who charged first into the fire, who saved the crown from falling. And yet, when the feast was held, it was the politician, the voice in the room, not the blade on the field, who was showered with gold. Because history doesn't remember the humble, it remembers the visible. And maybe you've felt that. the sting of being passed over, the bitterness of watching louder, lesser voices take the rewards you earned in silence. You wonder, did I not give enough? Did I not do it right? But here's the brutal truth. In a world ruled by spectacle, merit alone is not enough. If you don't claim your space, someone else will fill it. So the question is no longer should you rise, but how can you rise without becoming arrogant? How do you speak with fire without burning everything around you? The answer begins here. You stop mistaking silence for humility. True strength doesn't hide. It reveals itself with controlled intensity. You don't need to boast. You need to own. Own your effort. Own your value. Own your space in the room. This isn't about ego. It's about justice. If you've done the work, stand tall. If you've earned the right, take the mic. Modesty may win you sympathy, but visibility wins you power, because the world doesn't hand crowns to the quiet. It hands them to those who dare to be seen wearing one. So look around. Who's being rewarded? Is it the humble, or is it the loudest echo in the chamber? And more importantly, which one are you becoming? 3. False humility is the most toxic lie you tell yourself. There is no betrayal more subtle or more destructive than the one you commit against yourself. Not with words, not with action, but with silence, with the quiet performance of smallness. You tell yourself you're being kind, considerate, likable. But the truth is uglier. You're folding your power to fit into places that never deserved you. False humility is not a virtue. It's a disguise. And with every day you wear it, you begin to forget what's underneath. Like a wolf dressed as a sheep for too long, you start to believe you're harmless. You shrink your voice, dampen your edge, dilute your essence, not because it's right, but because it's safer. But at what cost? The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, Carl Jung reminds us. Yet how many live their lives performing, editing their strength so others feel comfortable? You know this war between the self that wants to speak and the self that whispers instead, between the truth that burns inside and the mask you wear to be accepted. And every time you choose the mask, you fracture, you become divided. And that fracture, it never stays small. It leaks in resentment, in shame, in the late-night thoughts where you ask, why did I hold back? How much time have you already lost pretending to be less than you are? How much of your fire was buried under fake humility while your soul begged you to stop apologizing? Because this is not humility. This is self-abandonment. True power doesn't pretend to be powerless. It doesn't beg for permission to exist. It doesn't ask, will they still love me if I stand tall? It simply stands, grounded, clear, unapologetic, not in arrogance, but in truth. And truth doesn't need to scream. It simply refuses to lie. But what happens when you decide to drop the act? When you stop performing weakness to please the crowd? What happens when the sheep's wool falls off and the wolf beneath steps forward? That moment comes with a price. You may lose approval. You may be called arrogant. You may be feared. But you will finally be whole. So now ask yourself, are you ready to be seen without disguise? Because the world may not like the real you, but you will. 4. Machiavelli's law: power demands projection, not modesty. Power isn't always earned. Sometimes it's simply perceived. And in Machiavelli's world, perception is everything. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. That sentence is not a warning. It's a weapon. A truth the powerful have always understood. In the eyes of the world, what you project becomes what you are. The mistake the humble make is believing that the world will dig deeper, That merit will speak louder than presence. But it doesn't. The strong may be overlooked if they don't look strong, and the weak may rise simply because they've mastered the performance of strength. This is the stage Machiavelli saw clearly, not of justice, but of illusion. You don't win by hiding behind your goodness. You win by learning how to command perception, not with lies, but with clarity, with control. Caesar didn't ask Rome to see him as powerful. He declared it. He projected an image so undeniable that the empire shaped itself around it. Not because he was the strongest, but because he appeared to be inevitable. So, what does that mean for you? It means shrinking into humility isn't nobility, it's surrender. In a world that rewards boldness, modesty becomes misinterpretation. You may be wise, skilled, capable, but if you don't show it, they won't see it. And if they don't see it, they won't believe it. The game is cruel, but it's real. You control the narrative not by staying silent, but by crafting the image, by walking into a room and letting them feel something they can't name. Authority without words, confidence without noise, presence without apology. That's power, that's projection. And that is what Machiavelli understood. Influence belongs not to the meek, but to the masters of appearance. But the question that haunts the conscious soul is this: can you project power without losing who you are? Because projection is dangerous. It can become a mask so convincing, even you forget who's behind it. That's the razor's edge, between self-possession and self-deception, between leading with strength and performing strength out of fear. So here's your challenge. Don't just appear powerful. Become someone who can afford to project power because it's grounded in something real. Master both worlds, the visible and the invisible. Let them see the fire, but make sure it's fueled by truth. Because if the world is watching, what are you showing them? 5. Humility creates power imbalances. Silence signals submission. In the wild, weakness isn't judged, it's hunted. Humility in hostile territory is not a virtue, it's a scent. And predators follow it like blood in the water. You've been told that staying humble makes you safe. But in truth, it marks you as prey. Every time you choose silence when strength is needed, you tell the world you're willing to lose. Nature does not distinguish between good and evil, only strength and weakness. Jung didn't say it to be cruel. He said it to wake us up. Because the rules of survival haven't changed, only the masks have. The boardroom is the battlefield, the social circle is the arena, and those who bow are not rewarded for their grace. They are overruled, overlooked, devoured. Imagine the rabbit, timid, quiet, careful. It crouches beneath the shadow of the hawk, hoping humility will spare it. But humility doesn't stop talons, and silence never saved the weak. That rabbit's fate was sealed the moment it stopped moving, the moment it believed that playing small would make it invisible. You think the world will recognize your worth without you having to show it? That the loud and the shameless will make space for the silent? Number. If you don't stand firm, they will use you. If you don't speak, they will speak for you. And if you hesitate, they'll decide who you are. Humility has its place, in reflection, in growth, in private moments of recalibration. But in confrontation, in war, in a room full of wolves, it is not protection. It is an offering, one you can't afford to give. This is the brutal psychology of power. Submission is not read as kindness. It's read as consent, consent to be ruled, dismissed, consumed. And the more you play humble, the more you confirm their belief that you're beneath them. So ask yourself, what signal are you sending when you hold back? When you let others speak over you? When you swallow your truth for the sake of seeming nice? Because if humility isn't serving your power, it's sabotaging it. The question is no longer whether you should be humble. The question is, what should you project instead? Because the rabbit dies quiet, but the lion makes them watch. 6. Silent confidence, performative humility. There's a difference between being quiet and being invisible. One is strategic, the other is self-erasure. And too many confuse humility with submission, as if not speaking somehow earns respect. But in reality, it's not the loudest person in the room who holds power. It's the one who doesn't need to speak. And yet everyone listens anyway. A wise man never needs to say he is wise, said Alan Watts. Because true power doesn't broadcast. It doesn't seek approval. It simply is. Silent confidence is unsettling. It disturbs people because it reveals a kind of inner stability they can't manipulate. You don't flinch. You don't over-explain. You don't chase validation. You just exist, with weight. Performative humility, on the other hand, is exhausting. It's a play, scripted apologies, forced modesty, exaggerated downplaying of your worth. You shrink in public, hoping they'll admire you for being humble. But what they really see is someone who doubts their own greatness. Think of a king. He doesn't walk into the court announcing his title. He doesn't beg for acknowledgement. The room adjusts to his presence. The weight of his silence speaks louder than any speech. He does not kneel, not because he is arrogant, but because he remembers who he is. You don't need to brag. You don't need to fight for attention. But you must stop lowering your crown to make others comfortable. There is a power in stillness, a presence in silence. But only when that silence comes from knowing your worth, not hiding from it. Let your energy speak. Let your results speak. Let your boundaries speak. Every time you resist the urge to justify, you teach the world how to treat you. Because the most terrifying kind of power is the one that doesn't ask for permission. But here's the question that lingers. Can silence alone build an empire? Can calm command replace the loud demands of lesser men? Not if the silence is empty. Not if it hides fear. Silence must be backed by action, by discipline, by vision. Otherwise, it's not confidence, it's camouflage. So remember this, you don't owe them humility. You owe yourself truth. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. 7. True power requires the death of approval seeking. Humility often wears a mask, not of virtue, but of addiction. An unspoken craving to be liked, accepted, applauded. You shrink, not out of principle, but out of fear. You dim your power, hoping the room will feel warmer. But Machiavelli warned us, he who seeks to please everyone pleases no one. And in trying to belong everywhere, you lose yourself everywhere. Approval is a drug. It numbs insecurity while feeding it. One compliment, and your chest fills with pride. One criticism, and you collapse into self-doubt. You build your identity on the shifting sands of external opinion, hoping applause will confirm your worth. But applause fades. What remains is the silence and the question, who are you without their validation? You cannot lead and seek approval at the same time. A leader does not ask, do they like me? He asks, are we moving forward? He does not hesitate because his decision might upset the crowd. He moves because standing still would betray the mission. Power demands clarity, and clarity requires detachment from praise, from criticism, from the constant thirst to be enough in someone else's eyes. But detachment doesn't come easy. It's not a switch. It's a severing, like cutting the strings of a puppet. At first you fall. The safety of their approval is gone. The rules you played by crumble. You're no longer the character they crafted for you. And yes, it's terrifying. But then, something shifts. You realize you're standing, uncontrolled, awake. This is the rebirth of power. When you no longer filter truth through the lens of acceptance. When you stop tailoring your identity for mass consumption. When you refuse to dilute your edge to be digestible. That's when real leadership begins. Not as performance, but as presence. They may call you arrogant. Let them. They may misunderstand your silence, your strength, your refusal to bend. Let them. You were not born to be understood by everyone. You were born to be. To lead without chains is to walk alone at times, yes. But it's also to walk freely. No more puppeteer, no more mask, only spine, vision, and fire. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped begging to be liked? What if your power didn't ask for permission? It simply walked into the room and owned it. 8. Embrace the shadow, the part of you that refuses to bow. There's a part of you you've been taught to fear, the one that growls when you're disrespected, that clenches its fists when you're told to shrink. It's the side that won't kneel, that doesn't care about being liked, that would rather burn bridges than betray itself. That is your shadow, and it is not your enemy. It is your forgotten power. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, said Carl Jung. What you repress rules you. The humility you've been praised for, the quietness, the softness, the constant self-erasure, it has buried your shadow beneath layers of politeness. But beneath that surface lives the self that never asked for permission. And it's still alive, still waiting. You were taught that power should be gentle, that humility is higher, that obedience is safe. But this world doesn't honor the tame. It uses them. And deep down, something in you knows this. That's why you flinch when you say yes and mean no. That's why silence burns your throat when you swallow your truth. Because the shadow remembers what the mask forgets. You were never meant to bow. To reclaim yourself, you must stop fearing that part of you. The one that's angry, the one that wants more, the one that says enough. That isn't arrogance. That's your spine remembering how to stand. That's your soul tearing off the costume of humility and stepping forward, unashamed, unfiltered, real. The death of false humility is violent. It doesn't ask, it declares, it shatters the narrative that kept you small and replaces it with fire. This is transformation, not transition. A phoenix doesn't rise politely. It burns the sky. And you're not here to be liked. You're here to become. So embrace the part of you that refuses to kneel. Feed it discipline. Sharpen it with clarity. Let it speak when you would have once stayed silent. Let it stand when others demand you bend. This is not the fall from grace. It's the rise into truth. Because humility that costs you your power is not grace. It's self-abandonment. And the moment you choose to embrace the shadow instead of suppress it, you don't just rise, you return. As the version of yourself the world hoped you'd never remember. The world told you to be humble, to sit quietly, to wait your turn. But now you know. That was never about peace. It was about control. And the ones who win this world? They don't ask for permission. They take up space. Machiavelli didn't write for the weak. Jung didn't analyze the obedient. They spoke to you, the one who's ready to burn their old self, to rise without kneeling, to lead without apology, to become someone the world can't ignore. If this awakened something in you, then join the Mindrift movement. Like, share, subscribe. This isn't just a video, it's a signal, a call to those who refuse to shrink. Stand tall, stay silent, and never, ever bow again.